Okay, hello everybody, and welcome. Good morning to everybody in this part of the world. I think good afternoon and good evening to people further east. And this is the MANRS Community Meeting, November 13th, 2024. I'm going to be moderating this session. There's two sessions today. There's an East session and a West session. This is for people who aren't in the US. We want to try and get US and Latin America into a separate session later on in the day. It's a huge privilege to be invited to moderate this session, which is being hosted by Global Cyber Alliance. So my name is Nick Hilliard. I'm from INEX. INEX is an internet exchange in Dublin, Ireland. Global Cyber Alliance now host the MANRS project, and I'm very happy to welcome Alejandro and also Andrei Robichowski from MANRS. So Alejandro, if we could just move on to the slides here, we'll just run very quickly through the program for the day. So first of all, Flavio is unable to make it. We have Warwick on the call. Flavio and Warwick have been serving on the MANRS steering committee for several years, and I'm very happy to say that they've both made excellent contributions, and it's a real shame to see them stepping down. After that, after their remarks, we're going to have an update from the secretariat run by Global Cyber Alliance, and then a couple of presentations from community members from Stavros in Amzix and Tommaso in Università degli Studi Roma in Italy. And after that, we'll have a short period for community discussion. So if there are any issues that people would like to talk about, want to bring up with Global Cyber Alliance, want to bring us up with us as steering committee members, or just talk about MANRS in general, please have a think about it, and we will we'll set aside a little bit of time for that. So I'd like to hand over to Warwick for his final remarks. So Warwick, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I just want to say it has been a privilege and an honor to serve on the MANRS steering committee, and also to be the chair for the last 3 years. It has been a remarkable journey. We've had a lot of different people throughout the time talking about what are the things that we could do, what could we improve, what could we change, and also reviewing what it is that MANRS means to people, and also especially how much MANRS has become a far more talked about subject with governments in regards to legislations and processes and procedures. So from my perspective, I think MANRS has grown significantly over realistically the last 4 years that I've been sitting on the steering committee. And I would like to just call out to my fellow steering committee members that the discussions have been robust. They've been certainly energetic, but at never any point has it been anything but cordial. And for that, I am truly thankful, and really do appreciate the efforts that everyone's taken to read the documents or to provide feedback. And a lot of the feedback, a lot of people won't understand that there's a lot of backwards and forwards that goes behind the scenes when it comes to the steering committee, in regards to what does this mean on a global level? How do we improve MANRS? How do we make sure that it stays relevant? And for that, I am truly excited to see where MANRS goes over the next couple of years. And as I have said to the steering committee, this is not goodbye. This is just a temporary vacation whilst I look after my physical health for a little bit. And I'll still be floating in the background, helping people out, talking about MANRS at conferences and so forth. And for that, I really appreciate the support that I've had from both ISOC, the steering committee, and from GCA. And with that, I'll hand back to Nick.
Okay, thank you very much, Warwick. I have to say, it has really been a pleasure to have you on the steering committee. And as chair, I think you've done a really good job in steering MANRS through the last couple of years, which has been quite interesting for the community. So from the secretariat now, I'm going to hand over to Alejandro, who's going to give us a review of the last year.
There I go. Sorry, it's hard to unmute and to move the slides at the same time. Thank you, Warwick. It was a pleasure to have you, and just I can just say that hope you recover quickly and come back to the fight, because you're a really appreciated member of the community, and from the perspective of somebody who joined lately to this world of routine security, you've been very helpful and very welcoming. Yeah, and it was great to have you around. Yeah, so just recover and come back quickly. So there you are. So it's been 1 year now since we started working on the transition, yeah, on getting the project managed into a GCA project. We got it from the Internet Society, and well, after 1 year, it was November, so now it's November. We can have a little bit of perspective, yeah, on what we have achieved and what is still needs to be done, yeah. I will focus on this year, and Andre, my colleague, he will focus on what is coming next. Yeah, so gonna have a perspective of the immediate past and the future. Feel free to interrupt and or even to leave the questions for later as you wish. I will keep it going. So there you are. First, we're gonna cover some of the numbers. Yeah, the rough numbers that describe our work in this year. This is the most important one, yes, the uptake. Yeah, we committed to make the community grow at 10% at least. We've hit the 11% at this moment, and I know October, we're closing the figures for October and November are being very good months, so I hope this will go even higher. We are growing in all categories, but in vendors, which is the one that has been stable since the beginning in six members. For network operators, we've passed the threshold of 1,000 members, which is great. Participants, sorry. IXPs, we have 31 at this moment, and CDN and cloud, it's 141. Yeah, in total, we are close to 1,200, and I think it's yeah, sorry, I'm checking everything at once, and it's difficult. So I think it's good. It's good growth. We still have a long way to go. Of course, everybody knows that, but well, at least the thing is growing, and we get new participants from different parts of the world. That's also very rewarding to see that people are connecting from all over the world. This is why we hold 2 sessions, one for East and one for West. So we divided the world in 2. And well, I think we're going to continue growing. Yeah. And we would really appreciate your help for that. Yeah. You work with other peers, you work with other organizations, and bring as many as you can. Yeah. Bring them to us. You can share my contact details, or anybody's from the team contact details, and we'll be happy to help them in the process. Yeah. It's very important that we grow, and that we grow organically. Yeah. So it's word of mouth. Yeah. Have to grow as a whole ecosystem. Yeah. Because otherwise security won't work as efficiently as we want to. Okay. So this is the organic growth. In terms of what we've done, we've celebrated 2 community meetings. You will get the slides. You will be able to see them if you want. Here you can see the previous community meetings. We record them. This one is being recorded, and it's going to be posted in the YouTube channel of MANRS, so that everybody can see them again. As I said, every of these 2 meetings had 2 sessions. So there was a session East and a session West for May 15, and there was one for November. There's going to be one session East and one session West for November 13. Yeah, we are doing those next year. Probably we're starting to plan them. Probably will be more or less on the same time. Yeah, the idea is to have 2 at least. So we've also, Andrew will cover that, but we've also been very active in the MANRS Plus working group. We have about close to 80 participants, 10 of which are really active and are collaborating. And well, it's getting ready to move to the next step. I don't want to step on this one because Andrew will cover it, but it was an important piece of activity for this year. In terms of communication, visibility, outreach, we've been publishing the the quarterly newsletters. We continue the publication. We also publish the community report at the beginning of the year. We're working on well, what is coming up next year for the newsletters. If you've been following them, we also move them to LinkedIn to make consumption easier. Now we have about 1,200 subscribers, which is more or less the same number of participants we have, and that is growing faster than in the actual mailing list. Yeah, in the mailing list we have about 900 subscribers, and on LinkedIn we have about 1,200 subscribers. The number of participants, the number of followers on LinkedIn is also growing very quickly. It's we went past 3,000 followers recently, which is a great figure, and well, it's about over 20% increase since January the 1st. Yeah, so it's growing well. People are reacting to what we publish. People are participating actively there, and yeah, as I said, for the participants, if you want to reshare things, if you want to comment on what we publish, if you have something interesting for us, for the blog or anything, just share it with us. Yeah. Also, we are encouraging to publish stuff in other languages than English. If you think it's relevant and the community needs to know and everything, just contact us and we can publish things in other contents. Yeah, we did a little test with Spanish in the LACNIC event. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, which was especially good because I'm Spanish myself. Yeah, it was a nice thing to do. Okay. Oops. We've also traveled a lot. We've traveled physically and virtually. We've participated in events in 15 countries, not always traveling. In some cases, we did it virtually, but they were either regional events or events with a very local approach. You can see the countries there. Well, Canada, United States, Paraguay, Guyana. So if you see all the countries, we've covered all the RIR regions. Yeah, we've had opportunities to speak and to promote MANRS either directly or through people like ISOC and also APNIC in different parts of the world. Yeah, and we've been involved well in all the RIR regions, as I said. We've been involved in the agendas of Apricot, LACNIC, NANOC, RIPE, which is the RIR events, the big RIR events, and the largest nodes in the world. And we've also been in other events like the AFPIF in Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, also EACO in Rwanda, GEANT in Belgium, TFCE in different parts in India and in Guyana, IETF, several meetings, and even MOG, yeah, which is a community that is very usual for GCA, but I don't know if it was that usual for MANRS. Yeah, so we're trying to cover as much as we can. Again, if you're aware of any event we should participate, if you just let us know. Yeah, just keep us posted, send proposals, send ideas, thoughts. Yeah, on this, we would like to have your feedback on this. So in terms of regional outreach, we had we were very happy to see that MANRS became part of Dash. I don't know if you know Dash. Dash is a platform from APNIC. It's for members only, but well, they added an indicator for MANRS preparedness in their dashboards, and they've been promoting it in different NOCs, in different meetings across the Asia Pacific region. Which, well, this is the session East. This is where we're gonna get some participants from there. But as you know, it's a large region and it's complex. Yeah, it's different types of communities and different languages, and so we really appreciate that the power of data is helping us increase the outreach and the presence of MANRS. Yeah, and also we are very happy to see that MANRS is a useful tool for APNIC to do their work, yeah, across the region. So you have a link there if you want to explore it later. It's on this www. We also were, as I was saying, we also participated in the LACNIC, LACIX, LACNOG, and first session, first.org, Forum for Incident Response Teams in Latin America, in Paraguay. It was very good, very interesting, and well, we participated in a meeting with LACIX, which is the regional association of ISPs, and also in the plenary. And it was very good. In the plenary, we did it in Spanish. It was my colleague Pablo. I think he's going to join soon, but he's not here yet. And yeah, been using Spanish and engaging in the local language of that region paid very well. I think we're gonna have interesting stuff going on, and it's gonna be translated into a bigger uptake. We also had very good conversations with Brazilian partners, and as you know, Brazil is one of the biggest countries in terms of uptake, maybe the biggest proportionally, and we're gonna continue our work there. Yeah. So that's going well, and also well in terms of international issues. Yeah, you know that we've had a very intense regulatory activity, especially in the US. There was the FCC proposal. There was also the White House mentioning routing security with the routing security guidelines. That work is going to continue. We were commenting on that together with ISOC. Also, the community was shared through the newsletter. So there's been a big debate there. If you are not aware of this, I highly recommend you to check the MANRS newsletter in LinkedIn, which is very easy to access, and then you have all the blog posts or our blog post, yeah. But there is a lot of materials there, yeah, for you to understand this important regulatory efforts. But it's not the US is not the only area where this is happening, yeah. We also have the United States, sorry, the United Kingdom, and also in Europe, there's been some MANRS is taken into consideration, and routing security is taken into consideration for all the regulatory efforts that are happening inside the European Union. Yeah. And in that sense, we had a very interesting conversation with people from the Joint Research Center. They're doing some metrics. They are measuring the uptake of MANRS in the European Union. So it's also very, very interesting. And I'm almost done. I'm talking a lot. Yeah. Just to let you know that, well, for us, for the Global Cyber Alliance, this was a big project. It wasn't easy. We already have several projects in different areas, and MANRS was a big one. Yeah, so it involved this transition. Yeah, involved a lot of work. We had to transfer all the hosting services. We had to transfer the auditing process to integrate it as part of us. We had to transfer the observatory. We added new resources to the observatory, and we also were supporting the steering committee, yeah, with different meetings. And remember, please, that you still have, I think we said 14 hours to vote. The elections are open. We are getting lots of very good participation. So the turnout is very, very good this year. And please keep on voting, or if you haven't voted yet, or tell your peers, your colleagues, if they can vote, to vote. Yeah, it's very, very important. We are electing 3 steering committee members, yeah, to take the seats that are being vacant from today, from the 1st of November. And yeah, that's kind of it for the steering committee. We met 5 times. There's one more meeting coming up. We also had a special workshop in August, so it's a lot. We meet a lot, and that's great. And yeah, in the observatory, we added raw stats. That was a new feature that we incorporated into the observatory and that everybody can use now. And I don't know if you have any questions. If not, I can move to Andre or to Nick, but he moves to Andre.
Okay, thank you very much, Alejandro. Do we have any questions from people on the call? No, I think we're good. All right, Andre, do you want to take the lead from here?
Sure. Well, thank you, Nick, and hi everyone. So I'll be talking about the future plans, what's coming up, and some of those efforts that I will be describing started a few years ago, but they're stretching in the future, and some of them, one of them is a really teaser because we are about to start working on this effort, but we thought it's a good opportunity to update the community on those plans. Next slide, please. So Ali, could you advance the slide, please? Thank you. All right. So the one slide back, maybe. Yeah, excellent. So the first effort I'm going to update you on is the working group on MANRS Plus, and I think the title should be slightly different. It's not only the business case for MANRS, but also the business case for routing security in general. Next slide, please. So talking about the benefits and what MANRS participation brings, apart from the benefit to the routing security, benefit to its participants, I think we can all agree that implementing MANRS actions, it actually protects your own network. For instance, people, your customers will not be able to become all of a sudden your transit providers, and that's a good thing. So those controls, they really bring benefit, immediate benefit. It also improving security of the global routing system. And because the global routing system experiences the problem of collective action, a lack of collective action, that's a very important input, although it doesn't bring immediate benefits because it depends on the sum of all contributions. And another thing that we sort of had in mind when MANRS was started and through the whole development of MANRS is that it provides some competitive advantage to MANRS participants because it is an indication of higher quality stance, higher security posture, and therefore that should be more attractive to its customers. So MANRS Plus work was really focusing on that third part and really focusing on that part on connectivity provider and their customers. So if the MANRS, we are not really distinguishing customers and providers. We all talk about the network operators. In MANRS Plus, we made this distinction, and I'll explain why. Next slide, please. So if we talk about MANRS in general, we look at this real whole blob, the whole routing system where network operators, and you probably saw this diagram by Kay, each dot represents an autonomous system. It's about 75, 76,000 these days. So a huge number, and the overall security of routing system depends on the actions of these autonomous systems. Now, when we talk about customers, they mostly located at the edge. There are a lot of them, but 85% of all autonomous systems are those customers, those edge networks. Many of them businesses, enterprises, universities, also home networks as well. So MANRS is really focusing, MANRS Plus is really focusing on this edge thing. Next slide, please. And when we talk about sort of edge, the internet, in fact, becomes much smaller for an enterprise. So it's really about, mostly about the enterprise itself and its connectivity provider. Because many of its external assets that are more and more hosted outside the perimeter of the enterprise, the intermediary to those assets, it's either the cloud provider itself, directly connected, or one, maximum two connectivity providers. So securing this path becomes a much more feasible way without sort of many external dependencies of other actors implementing or not implementing routing security controls. Next slide, please. So we looked at some of those relationships, and we did a light exercise. We looked at different sectors, business sectors, and we, for instance, we looked at some of the banking companies, finance companies in Australia, and looked what are potentially where potentially they can host their external assets. So we looked at what are the paths to those assets. And as you can see, if you remove, like DDoS mitigation providers, you will see that really the path contains at most one intermediary. Next slide, please. We did the same for business to business relationship. We looked at automotive industry and looked at major car manufacturers and their global suppliers. And again, you can see, well, the path is slightly longer, but you can see that if car manufacturers select their connectivity provider wisely and suppliers do the same, the whole sort of chain from supplier to the manufacturer is in fact secured. And by the way, color scheme is taken from the MANRS sort of readiness thing, so ready, aspiring, and lagging. And the sectors on this slide represent conformance to specific actions that we have in MANRS. Next slide, please. So for enterprises, routing security is nothing less than supply chain security. I think that's a very important point because our previous attempts to reach out to enterprise, to those edge networks and talk about routing security in general didn't find a really fertile soil, partly because that is not really in their purview. Also, there is a perception that that's something that outside there in the wild internet happens, and we're just doing our business. There's also lack of expertise, and it's not part of the normal security organization of an enterprise. So portraying this as a supply chain security, and this is not a stretch, as we just saw, it gives enterprises sort of this hook, how they can look and how they can contribute to better routing security. And their contribution is twofold. One is, of course, they have to implement their routing security controls. And also they have to implement some of the things like creating ROAs or registering their announcement in the routing, internet routing registry to enable their connectivity providers to implement effective controls. And the second, also very important thing, and that's where we come to the sort of business case, is that enterprises, understanding importance of routing security, supply chain security, they should demand proper routing security controls from their connectivity providers. So they really should ask a question, is my connectivity or cloud provider the first line of defense, or is it the weakest link to my external assets? Next slide, please. So that is really what MANRS Plus is about. It's really about the framework for this routing security that is part of supply chain security. It is focusing on this kind of last edge part of the internet, but it also covers a slightly extended set of requirements than compared to our sort of base MANRS. And it's conditioned to be able to be referenced or included in common InfoSec frameworks, which is what enterprises usually do. It also aimed at high level of assurance. So in order to be effective in procurement, in other type of requirements, and be able to check if the entity implements those requirements and meets those requirements, it's very important that relying parties on that assertion really sort of believe in that. So it's very credible. So if we say that someone is conformant with MANRS Plus, we're 100% sure that all the required controls that they declared are implemented properly. Next slide, please. So the current status, as I said, the work is done by the MANRS Plus working group, about 70 members, as Alejandro mentioned. 10 of them are very active. Now we're in sort of a different phase, but we had in developing the control metrics, we had monthly Zoom calls, and also a lot of collaboration on Slack and email. Anyone can still join this effort. I mean, please send your request to contact@manrs.org. The final draft is ready and is available. You can look at this at the website. And what we are working on is a self-assessment survey. I'll talk a little bit more about this as well. But if you're interested, again, please send us a request and we'll discuss this with you. Next slide, please. So talking about the control metrics, it is divided into 6 what we call control domains. And some of them you can see and they look very familiar. They're really sort of modeled by MANRS, and this is part of MANRS. This is not something that is sort of super MANRS, but it's really part of MANRS. Maybe you can think of another tier, but it is rooted in MANRS. So routing security, 7 controls, anti-spoofing protection, 2 controls, maintaining routing information, 3 controls, global communication, 1 control. So those are, MANRS actions. The difference here is that they are more detailed and they are defined in stronger terms. And for auditing, we are thinking about more profound systems, how we can measure and audit conformance. But also we had to include some other things like DDoS protection. or DDoS attack mitigation, or security services. Now, here we don't really talk about services, we more talk about capabilities that connectivity provider has implemented that can lead to those services and offerings. So the framework itself doesn't define the service offering. This is outside this framework, that's between the customer and provider. But knowing that connectivity provider can implement this and can make this offer is important. So that's why those controls are there. Partly also because to bring attention, this is more in line in what enterprises, edge networks expect from a connectivity provider. That's what on their horizon, of course, apart from just general routing security, as supply chain security, also things like security services and DDoS mitigation. Next slide, please. So I mentioned this self-assessment survey. So what we did, we create a survey from the control metrics to prepare for the sort of real deployment and understand the modalities of that deployment. So it's a self-assessment survey. There is no audit element there. It's really provide information about your controls, but you also provide information whether those controls are documented and whether you are able to provide documentation as evidence that those controls. It also asks for feedback to what extent the controls are described, the clarity of descriptions of those controls. So we started sending the survey to interested connectivity providers. Again, if you're interested, let us know, to collect this feedback and understand the more insight in how we can shape up this program for the launch, but also understand what is the appetite among connectivity provider to actually get sort of certified in MANRS Plus. And if we're successful, so that will be the basis for the future application form. And you can see it's much more complex than the application form for MANRS, but hopefully it will bring this type of acceptance in MANRS Plus will bring more benefits to the participants than just the base MANRS. Next slide, please. Now, many things still need to be done. I mentioned that we are striving for higher level of assurance, and some of the things that will rely on documentation and description that a connectivity provider will offer. But some of the things like how we can measure controls, filtering controls. We are thinking of maybe creating a more active infrastructure for doing this, because currently, as you know, in MANRS, we are relying on services like GRIP that observe global BGP changes and infer potential incidents. Two caveats. One caveat is that we are measuring non-compliance, and second caveat, there's some false positives. So really, maybe some challenges in reaching this high level of assurance. Next slide, please. Again, if you're interested, let us know. I mean, we'll be happy to discuss this with you and participate. Now I'm moving to the second part of my presentation, and I would like to talk about, this is a teaser, as I said. It's very nascent. We are still discussing this with the steering committee, but steering committee asked us to look at a more professional way, more clear and structured way to sort of answer the question how we develop, adopt, and maintain MANRS documents. And by MANRS documents, I of course mean MANRS actions, but also other documents such as MANRS charter or even implementation guides. Next slide, please. So, well, MANRS is maturing. I think we can all agree with that. It's 10 years old, and I think it went a long way from sort of informal initiative, bring people together, to a more structured, formalized effort. Is being referenced in many conversations on government level, but also in security frameworks. But I think what we need to do to expand the impact, we need to really a more formal process, also to facilitate this kind of references. So some other documents can reference MANRS not as a website, not just as an effort, but also as a sort of a standard. Because as you know, MANRS is sort of twofold. It's the standard, it's the actions, but also the effort, the collective action, coordinated collective action that MANRS stimulates. So to increase credibility, transparency, inclusiveness, I think what we are missing is the documented formal process, how these actions can be modified, how they can be created, how they're maintained. And the thing is, to be the truth, they were created and developed in an open, transparent, inclusive fashion. We just didn't have a documented process, right? We would create a working group, we'd call for participation, people will come together, we'll have meetings, we'll have last call even in the MANRS community for all the actions, and then we'll declare this done. But we didn't follow a formal process. I think at this stage we are ready to, and probably we need to have this formal process documented. And also that will lead, we need to introduce a formal document series. So there is more clarity how actions are evolving, how they may be changing. So if you, for instance, commit to a certain document, certain version of action, what happens if it changes, this kind of stuff, which calls for a document series. So the whole sort of trail is very clear, and it's very clear to everyone what the current commitment, where the current commitment is documented. Next slide, please. Now, this is just to give you an idea. So that's the process we're thinking about. It's not to discuss this on this call, but basically it's a more formal process with more formal phases and some timing requirements, how long those phases can take, so that also external parties, they have confidence in those documents and those, well, if you like, standards, MANRS standards that this MANRS development process produces. Next slide, please. So, as I said, it's very nascent. We are still discussing this and discussing how to bring this up to the community. What is very important that we are going to publish, and when I say we, it's secretariat working together with the steering committee, publish the rationale for this, why we need this, and sort of set the context for the real discussion of the MANRS development process. Share the proposal. We're working on sort of as a starting point, the proposal for this MANRS development process. And then, of course, how you develop, how you agree on the MANRS development process. The best way is to use the draft MANRS development process to approve and debug on the way the MANRS development process. So once we are done with that, we have the tool to be able to revise MANRS document and actually transfer them in sort of MANRS standards, that they have those qualities that allow external parties to reference and get confidence. And I think that's the last slide, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre, for giving that overview. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really important that this work is done. MANRS is, as Alejandro mentioned earlier on the call, the principles that MANRS is enshrining are being deployed by regulatory agencies around the world, the FCC, ENISA, and even in the past couple of days, we've seen a request for consultation from ENISA about NIS2, in which routing security gets a mention. So I think it's really important from that point of view to ensure that the MANRS program has a very stable institution and very stable institutional structure, and I think it's incredibly important the work that GCA is doing in this regard. So I'd just like to say thank you very much. This is really important and really worthwhile. Okay, so looking forward. So the next talk is from Stavros in AMSIX, and he is going to give us an idea about what AMSIX are doing with routing validation at using IR information. So take it away, Stavros.
Thank you, Nick. Can you hear me, guys? Is it clear?
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, then let me share my screen then. Okay, I'll send a request.
It's done. You should. It shows.
Can you see my? Oh, maybe I should share the other screen. All right. Can you see my
Yes.
screen now? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. So thank you, Nick, for the introduction. Actually, because the title was too long, I decided to rename it to Sharing is Caring. It's a new presentation I prepared for this meeting. And I name it Sharing is Caring because you understand why. Because in other words, we all care about a robust and a stable internet. So that's why you, as a customer, you should share. And I will elaborate about that during the rest of the presentation. A little bit about the AM6 route server architecture. Maybe you have seen this slide in the past. It's not something fancy. We do this architecture for many, many years now. In fact, we have the route servers in the heart of our network, right? Commodity servers running on x86 machines. And we pull data from RR databases, from RPK validators, and of course from Team Kimru to create tables where we validate actually the prefixes of our customers when they send the prefixes to us. Then we decide what is invalid, what is valid. We store them on the primary table, and then we propagate the good routes to the rest of the members. So something similar that many members in the IXP industry, many colleagues in the IXP industry are doing. So going one step further, however, AM6 route servers have some unique characteristics. And one of them is, for example, the fully automated pipeline. We have our own RPSL parser to parse RPSL objects. However, it's very basic. It's not a fancy one. It does only basic stuff. Also, another unique characteristic is that we reconfigure the route servers every hour. And as far as I know, this is the time slot that is the fastest in the industry. Nobody is reconfiguring route servers every hour. Many IXPs do it per 8 hours, 12 or 24, depends on the customer base. I can say that maybe we are the most aggressive on that. We also have dynamic per AS prefix limits, so we monitor the growth of the prefixes of the customers, and based on that, we adjust the prefix limit per connection. And one last and unique characteristic that we have is the 3+1 filtering mode. So means that the customer is able to choose via the portal what type of filtering he wants to have on his BGP feed. He can have an IRDB-based filtering or RPKI-based filtering, or filtering based on IRDB and RPKI, which is actually the default that we apply. If customer doesn't select or says via email to us, then we by default apply this. Which means that if a prefix is marked as IRDB invalid or RPK invalid, it's filtered out from his BGP feed. And we also have unfiltered BGP feed. You just get only the community tags, but this is per request. So we need to get an email with your request, evaluate it, and then give you this filtering mode. So I'm gonna zoom on the RDB one, of course. That's why we are here. I'm gonna leave out the rest. And talking about RDB-based filtering that we do in AM6, we use it both. I mean, we use our data both for filtering and traffic engineering. For example, here we have an outnum object from RIPE-NCC, for example, that we go and fetch it regularly from the RR database. And then what we do, we match the export line. We see what the customer wants to announce to us. For example, in this case, it's AES-RIPE-NCC. And what we do, we just resolve this we resolve this AS set. We build a nice prefix list. We put it on Bird, and then that's it. This is just for filtering purposes. Perfect, simple and nice and clean. But what we also do, as I said, we also do traffic engineering based on that. For example, we have here another customer who says that I want to export to AMP6 route servers, to the customers of the AMP6 route servers, my own AS set, but I want to accept these guys. So he has prepared another AS set with some peers that he doesn't want to receive their prefixes. However, we are able to work on that. We are able to understand this statement. And what we do, we just resolve this as well. And as you can see, if you resolve this AS set here, you get some nice members and nice ASNs. And one of them, for example, is the AS 20, 24, 25. So we get this number, and then what we do, we create another list of AS numbers, where, for example, we put this guy over there. So we go to this 20, 24, 25, and you say, no, this guy 51088 doesn't want to talk to you, so you will not get his prefixes. So that means that we're able to do traffic engineering on ASN level based on RPSL data. So we provide customer a nice way to aggregate those information. I mean, the way is there, the technique is there. RPSL is not new; it's there for ages. We just are able to utilize this for the good of the customer to apply traffic engineering, bulk traffic engineering rules. So that means that AS sets are equally important, right? Are equally important as route objects because, for example, as we say, or as I say, AS sets can be used in the vertical direction in general. What classically happens to the internet is that in the vertical direction, means that with an AS set, you can define the customer cone. For example, AS 123 provides transit to AS 1000 or 2000, and then he can create an AS set called AS my customers, and then he can say to my transit, to my bigger transit, I announce my customer cones. AS set can also be used in the horizontal direction, which is a very common way that happens in XP industry, where actually in an AS set you can define your peers, right? You can define your peers and you say, for example, the ASN 123 wants to peer with AS 456 or 789. So what you do, you create an AS and you put these guys over there and you say to these guys, to my peers, I want to announce my prefixes or my customers. So in a horizontal direction. Or we've seen also what happening very commonly is the flat situation. For example, somebody, CDN or a small to medium network might not have customers, might be a hosting provider, but it might be the case that he has 3 or 4 ASNs. So he aggregates those ASNs in an AS set, and he says, look, I'm going to announce to you this AS set, and inside this AS set is my 3, 4 AS numbers. So actually it aggregates his network in a nice AS set, and then he advertises to the rest of the internet. So it's a tool that is being used, as we see, in many ways in the industry. And based on the assets, we create prefix lists which enhance the routing security. Because I mean, with a prefix list, I mean, we can, I mean, as IXP operators, we can filter out the garbage, of course, like default routes or private space, RFC 1918, and so on. But the customers need to tell us what is important to you, right? And the customer need to come to us and with the assets and the RPSL options say, okay, this is important to me, because then we can provide cleaner and more precise BGP feeds. Also, if we have a good prefix list, the fat finger mistakes are being reduced. At the same time, unnecessary BGP updates are also reduced, right? So you don't want your routing engine to be killed constantly by BGP updates that you don't want to receive. And in general, makes the overall route server ecosystem more robust. And in many cases, IR-based objects are the only source of truth, right? Because RPK adoption increases, but is not there yet. And ASPA is still a work in progress. So it will take some extra years for these new standards to be more mature and well adopted. But yeah, however, not all members play fair, right? So BGP configuration hijacks or fast fingers, that's why they lead to RPK adoption. We have prefix list duplications lead to hierarchical assets, right? So we've seen this happening in the past. Route leaks, BGP route leaks, especially between IXPs, have made the industry create the RFC 9234, which is the BGP roles thingy. BGP community abuses or overusage lead to new IXP rules, and so on and so on. And of course, we all want RPK to replace classic IR-based filtering, but it takes too long. And in that case, I would invite you to check Jeff Huston's last presentation from the RIPE meeting in Prague with the title "Is Infrastructure Security an Internet Market Failure?" It explains very nicely those stuff. Next slide. So, okay, we talk about IRR, but the IRR ecosystem is a mess, and people that are in the industry for many years know this very well. So we had, before IRR ecosystem, we had John Postel handing out generous large allocations. And then there is got established. But that led that not all available address space existing to IRRs and national IRs. Space allocated before the establishment of RIRs is called legacy. And this is our biggest obstacle right now. And because of that, many private IRR databases have been created in order to host legacy space and overcome limitations of IRRs. And some of them actually allow registration of anything inside their DB, which is super problematic because it leads to duplications, the truth is not guaranteed, and there is a big frustration between members, customers, and the rest of the industry. So let's try to do something to improve this. We need to work first on the IRR ecosystem, and also we need to work on improving our infrastructure as well. So one of the first things we did in AMP6 was to adopt IRD version 4, which is a very nice piece of software that is mirroring IRR data locally to our infrastructure. That helps us to increase availability. But also improving the performance because the configuration finishes faster. We are able to retrieve and resolve the RPSL objects way faster because now they're locally in our network, just 1 millisecond away, and that makes the overall performance better. But also we have a way to apply policies if we want, right? That's amazing for us. And also we can inherit some cool features like ASET resolution because IRD can do that. Usually people rely on BGPQ4, but what if there's a bug on BGPQ4? Then you can double check with IRD if the ASET is resolved correctly, and then you can do those type of cross checks. But there's a problem with IRR mirroring. The IRR mirroring was not publicly available for many years. The RIPE, NCCs, and RTM servers were available only upon request, I think for some legal reasons, and then you had to send an email to explicitly ask permission for mirroring. So what I did back on RIPE 79, I submitted NWI 9 to database working group to help us fix this. And the RIPE community accepted that. And by 2020, the RIPE NCCs and RTM service opened to all to freely mirror the data, the RPSL data. However, there's a second problem on that with the mirroring is that IRR mirroring was based on an RTM v3 which is an old telnet-based protocol. Protocol, big word. It doesn't have keep alive mechanism. It provides everything in plain text and unencrypted and transport. So that's bad. And the bootstrap process is not always trivial and sometimes super slow. And there is long time synchronization, which is complicated, and users need to resynchronize after a couple of weeks. And in general, it's not a well-specified protocol. It's just some things, a mechanism is that is put on a PDF file, published on a page, and that's it. So we submitted back on November 2020 and WI12 to the RAP database working group to fix that. And we decided in the community that NRTM v4 will be the new standard. I worked with Sasha and Job. We defined this in an RFC that was submitted to the GROW working group of ITF, and that is a nice progress because now we have something that is very well documented. It's a public standard. NRTMv4 is inspired by RRDP protocol defined in RFC 8182. It has JSON-based files in any HTTPS endpoint, actually. It uses signature and hashes for authenticity and a single publication point and session IDs for consistency. It supports UTF-8, which is good because we see this UTF-8 discussion happening recently in database working groups, so support is coming there as well, so we are ready. But the object format is out of scope of this discussion. And what's the status now with the NRTMv4? As I said, is official resolution for NWI12 of that RIPE database working group. RIPE NCC has implemented the server-side code to support it, and RRD-v4 has both support for server-side and client-side. We perform also 3 weeks before the first successful key rollover, and I have an instance in the lab that looks into this NRTMv4 code. But we also have RRD-v4 running in production, but without the NRTMv4 support. In general, there is improved reliability, security, and scalability in mirroring. We have fewer silent errors. And of course, since scalability is guaranteed, that means that we can have more open access to NRTM from other RARs. Let's see. All right, so the question now is, okay, you have mirroring, but what about selecting the sources of truth, right? So we mirror data, but from where do you mirror data? RPSL data. So in M6, we say we're going to support only the big five, of course, the RIPE, RNA, PNIC, AFRINIC, LACNIC, but also national delegations like JPRR and IDNIC. And those are the official DPs that we support for mirroring. And from unofficial databases, we support only NTT level 3 and RADB. This pool of databases works well for us in the RIPE region. And we like to thank the RIPE NCC and the RIPE community because they put their data mostly in RIPE database. They're clean and up to date. So this doesn't create any problem to us. However, this restricted pool of databases introduced some frustration to remote IXPs in APNIC region for mostly. But we have a clear policy to our customers. We say move your data to official IR databases, and that's it. Then problems will be fixed. So why official only databases? Why we would like to go there? This is our end goal, right? So as I said, we have already a restricted pool, and our ultimate goal is to get out of the unofficial databases. First of all, there are no duplicates. It's very clear on that. Second, the official databases have policies and procedures to transfer IP space. which means that transferring space officially will also decrease duplications, or actually eliminates any type of duplication. Also, the RARs do regular user and organization checks, even when you subscribe, but also later. Recently in RIPE in Prague, I had my ARC meeting where I had the chance to sit with RIPE person, RIPE NCC employee, and evaluate organizational details and all the RPSL objects that we have. But also, they also adopt security standards, for example, two-factor authentication, where you need to log into the portal and do your changes. So guarantees that nobody outside of the organization can do nasty stuff to your routing information. Also, we've seen RRs reacting quickly to policies in case of security incidents. And the most recent one was the hierarchical AS sets of RIPE NCC. This policy was adopted, I would say, in the middle of the night, and that was a good thing. And also, some IRRs provide also help with legacy space. There is a rule from RIPE NCC that you can bring your legacy space and make it official, and hopefully this can help. This rule can be, or not rule, but policy, I would say. This policy can be adopted from more RIRs. So, but in overall, I would say, okay, yeah. So when you do official only RR databases, it boosts RPKI adoption, right? Because route objects need to be in official databases in order to be signed from RPKI trust anchors. There is no way that you have your objects in RADDB or anything and have a trust anchor signing your objects. So we started doing this cleanup on RIPE 86. We introduced a common BCP for use of our databases by XP route servers, where actually we define that IXPs should use the official databases to create prefix filters for the route servers. And we have included all the official ones. And because we understand that the policy is not easily implementable from day zero, we said, okay, we're going to expand this list with 4 unofficial databases and give a grace period of 12 months for members and customers to clean up their objects and transfer them to databases. And we expanded this list with RADDB, RIPE non-auth, entity, and level 3. And so at the end of this grace period, the XP operators must stop supporting these additional IRRs and operate filter generation tools only based on the 5 rear databases. And during the grace period, IXPs will make multiple best effort attempts to warn their members about this upcoming policy and do the best they can to help customers replicate their policies in the appropriate RIR databases. And is anyone working in this direction? I mean, this is a new direction for the industry. Then the question is anyone working over there? As I said, M6 is already using a restricted pool of IR databases since September 2023. Data Communications also working only with official IR databases. That was a big nice surprise for us. I spoke with many smaller IXPs, and they all used a RIPE database for prefix filter generation. They don't go to unofficial ones, but to be honest, it's because their customer base is helping them, right? They have the customer base that is using a RIPE only, and they have clean data, so they say no way to increase support for other. And again, we also seen from the previous presentation from Andrei that also U.S. government federal networks finally will bring their space in ARIN, and that will help with RPK adoption. Again, unfortunately, this new standard that we introduced, this new BCP, Although it has support by many IXPs in EU region and even from the MANRS community, and we have done a lot of analysis and we presented in both RIPE and ERIX. Doesn't get good didn't get good welcome from many members, and currently we're a bit not stuck. We will come back to that. But we currently run a collaboration between AM6 and DGX in order to bring more data on the table and actually support with strong arguments our proposal to go into this direction. So my request to MANRS community is please help us adopt the BCP. It's another way to do RPKI, guys. And also paves the road for new security standards like ASPA, which is coming. ASPA, as I remember last year, the standard is finally a little bit more stable, and some first implementations start coming to the light. And this BCP will help us transition to RPK-only networks faster. I mean, since IPv6 adoption didn't succeed on that. Or in other words, to conclude my presentation, if you share clean, accurate, and trustworthy data, we build reliable and trustworthy prefix lists, which can reduce the amount of mistakes, and the amount of mistakes and means drop prefixes, right? Less drop prefixes means increased traffic volumes and less noise to the NOC, which means reduced NOC operations. And in general, increases robustness of the internet ecosystem, something that we all care about. Some parallel work that is happening to that is that in AM6, but also some other IXPs, we introduced a new standard in the Grow working group of ITF, where we only support standard and large communities, and we dropped support for extended communities. So this standard has been adopted now with our BERT2 migrations. Also, with the adoption of BERT2, RTR protocol is enabled by default to retrieve faster and more accurate ROAs from the cache, RPKI cache. And also we have enabled RFC 9234, the BGP roles, which can help prevent BGP leaks between IXPs. And that's it. Sorry for my long presentation. I'm open to some questions if there is time.
Okay, thank you very much, Stavros. We have a question from Anton. So 2 remarks. I can confirm Stavros' comment that using IR data in the right region is sufficiently supported and cleaner than in the rest of the world. Secondly, we also only support official IR databases when customers want to route their prefixes from our networks. So thank you very much for that comment. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do have another question, Stavros. So what's the maximum prefix list that you can accept for your customers?
Oh, good question. I think we have Hutchison with some 50,000-60,000 lines or something. Well, we try to aggregate, of course, right? There's an option to aggregate as much as you can. So yeah, if you get the plain route objects, yeah, the list is big. But we do have big customers, and I mean, Hurricane Electric also has an ASL, so we try to resolve, but also aggregate and shrink as much as we can.
Yeah, we aggregate our prefix lists too, and we find that when they are larger than 5,000 aggregated prefixes, it's not so much the provisioning in the route servers that is the problem, but it's the provisioning of changes. Right, so your routers become unavailable when you need to update a prefix list that's like 50,000 prefixes long.
To answer this, when I reconfigure the Dutch route servers here in Netherlands, it takes 15 to 20 minutes for the whole reconfiguration to happen. And I do understand what you say, but also at the same time, we're talking about a route server with almost 900 BGP peers. Also, the way it's working is not efficient because every time you reconfigure, it sends an route refresh message to the peer. It gets everything, evaluates everything. It does it for all 900. So it's not the most efficient way.
Yeah. So two smaller questions then. How often are the prefix lists updated?
Every hour.
Every hour. And that works? Okay, that's
As I
quite
said,
fast.
15 to 20 minutes. It's yeah, I mean, not all prefix lists. Of course, we make a diff, right? The pipeline goes find the prefix list, find the ASS that have been changed, and update only those prefix lists. But still, even if you put 3 or 5 updates to your configuration at 12 o'clock, for example, it still will make route server take a lot of time. And one of the things that also introduces delay is the updated ROA table, because in 1 hour is way too much, and you already have changes and you already touched the ROA table. So even if you don't have changes to your prefix list, if you do changes to the ROA table, BERT still sends a route refresh message to the peers, get all the prefixes and evaluate all the prefixes against the ROA table. And that takes a lot of time. You have 900 peers. Yeah. One of the things we do now with BERT 2 is we got rid of the ROA table that we have the static one on BERT 1. We have RTR protocol, so that helps. And also we introduce the import and export tables. The adjust and rebin and adjust and reboot feature that is specified in the BGP protocol, and that helps shrink even further the time.
And then the last question that's more also to the community. So we use these prefix lists not only for route filtering, but also for data plane ingress filtering. So source address validation. But in order to do that, of course, you have to implement the prefix lists on all the edge routers. Is that something you would consider, or do you see any problems with it? I mean, we do this for customers with less than 5,000 aggregated prefixes. So it's when you have a prefix list of the customer code of your customer, you can use that prefix list for source address validation. So basically BCP 84 for multi-homed networks, even when they are doing asynchronous routing. And so we are doing that now since, I think, 1 to 2 years, and it has quite some good results. Only the larger peers that that are too large to filter still send us spoof traffic occasionally, but for all our downstream customers, we've basically managed to vanish all the spoofed traffic, which is one of the goals for MANRS, of course.
That's a question for the community, right? For the
yeah, but also for you, right? Is this something that you would consider on your ports? I mean, I think you do some source address validation filtering, right?
No, we are a layer 2 platform, right? So what we do, we evaluate MAC addresses on the ports. So if a customer connects to AMP6 peering LAN, we learn his MAC address. We stick his MAC address to this particular port, and this is what we allow.
Okay,
and
so it's only route filtering. Yeah.
Yes, because customers are also not obliged to peer with the route servers in our case. And we have few customers, even some big ones, that they don't want to peer with the route servers. So in that case, not much you can do. Of course, you can build complex firewall filters.
So it's a suggestion to the community then. I think we should work on this further in the ITF SAF networking group.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Antoine. There's one more question, which unfortunately we won't get time to deal with. We're running a little bit behind time. So we need to move on to. So thank you very much, Stavros, for your for your talk. I think it's fascinating just to see the sheer amount of work that goes into high quality prefix filtering at IXPs. It's quite something. So next talk is about the routing security tool, ROST, and Tommaso, take it away.
Hello, hi all. Thank you, Nick, for the presentation. I'm Tommaso, a researcher from Roma III University, and I'm here today for presenting you ROST. Let me share the screen. Okay. Okay. Do you see my screen? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, that's all working fine. Thanks, Johnson.
Our project, Routing Security Tool, is a joint project with Mariano Scazzariello at Research Institute of Sweden and Antonio Prado at Gabriele D'Annunzio University in Italy. We started to think, in the presentation, I will also present the tool at all. So I apologize with all the people that saw the presentation many times. But maybe it's better for people that never seen nothing about ROST. So we started thinking about ROST. Sorry, I have a problem with my. Okay. So we started thinking about ROST, starting from the for actions of MANRS for network operators. And at this point, we asked ourselves today how a network operator can ensure the MANRS compliance. I mean, automatically and locally without all the MANRS process of the validation. If you want to verify your configuration before asking MANRS to verify it on the production network. Our proposal is ROST, which stands for Routing Security Tool, which is a tool based on the Trust No One approach. So it allows operators to perform a self-assessment of their configurations running the tool locally. We will see in details how it works, but basically we start from the configuration used by the operator in the production network to gather information about the candidate network and build a digital twin of the operator's networks to have an emulated environment where perform the checks of the anti-spoofing and the filtering actions. What is able to do ROST for now, we will see it with a step-by-step example. We supposed to have this topology and to be the operator of ISA, which wants to verify its MANRS compliance. The topology is very simple. We have ISA that presents two providers and only one customer. As first step, the candidate provides to ROST its IIS number, and then the tool uses this number to get candidate information from the internet registries, and it compares this info with the one that comes from the RIP dump collected from several route collectors in the internet. In this way, we are able to verify that all the networks announced to the transits are in the internet registries, and that all the network in the internet registries are really announced to the transit. So to verify the global validation action. If the candidate passes this check, we will go to the second step, which is the parsing of the configuration. Here, Rosette parses vendor-specific configuration to extract some information on the candidate network and collect them in an agnostic format that is independent from the vendor. How we do this? Originally, we exploited Batfish for parsing the vendor configurations. However, even if it is very good for the vendors that are already supported, it is quite complex to extend, and also it does not support IPv6 completely. So from the last update, we developed our custom parser for vendor configuration. We did it because we need to extract only few information from the configuration that are the one relatives to the topologies and the links. And in this way, we obtained a facilitated integration of new vendors inside the tool. After the parsing configuration, we have our information of the topology in agnostic format, but we missed some. For example, we don't know what are the relationships, and to understand them, we use the information collected in the previous step from the internet registries to build an intermediate representation that also consider the relationship between the different ISs. And after this, we also added a dummy OTT internet IaaS to all the providers that we will use to route the traffic outside our topology. After this, we use the information collected to the RIP dump, from the RIP dumps to assign the correct route to each IaaS that is involved inside the emulation, except for the IaaS of the candidate that has all its information inside the router configuration. Here, the example is very simple, but ROST also supports multi-op peerings, and so is able to model also more complex situation. Now we have our topology in our intermediate representation of the topology that has all the information we need to create an emulated scenario. For this, to power the emulation, we choose to use Katara. Katara is a container-based network emulator, which is based on Docker containers. It is an open source project that is also widely adopted for academic and teaching research. Why we choose it? Because it is lightweight, since it is based on containers, so it gives us minimal resource usage and a fast startup. Moreover, and this is very important, it presents a set of Python APIs that can be used to programmatically interact with the network scenario, which is needed in this case. And least but not last, it is very scalable, since it can run on Docker on a single host, but it can also use Kubernetes to scale up the emulation in a cluster. So let's go back to our ROST. We have our intermediate representation with all the information needed to transform intermediate scenario into a runnable network scenario for Katara. So about the topology. For all the devices except the one of the candidate, we use the FRR as routing suite. For the candidate, the aim is to use the same OS and the same version used by the candidate in its production network. For now, ROST only supports Cisco XR, Juniper Junos, and MikroTik Router OS, which we added from the last update. However, and this is even more true now that we have our custom parser, ROST can be easily extended to support other vendors. The only thing that we need is official image of the vendors to do that. Now we have our running topology, and we are ready to use it for verifying the anti-spoofing and filtering action. So we have an emulated environment that has the production network. We start checking the anti-spoofing and how it works. As first step, we have the client on the internet and one client attached to our candidate. Then for each provider, we insert a new client and we assign to it an IPv4 address and a VCX1 if the neighbor announces also IPv6 routes. Here we need to pay attention to assign subnets that are correctly announced and reachable in the network. Then we also assign an address to the internet client, which will act as the malicious client. Also here, we must choose a network that does not overlap the network for the internet clients, so the network modeled inside our topology. Now we are ready to send a spoofed DCMP packet from the client in our candidate IS to the candidate in our provider ISB. The point is that the source address used for the packet is the one of the malicious client. So here we have we can have two situations. In the first situation, the client sent the packet to the client in ISB, then it answers to the client, to the malicious client in internet. And if we see the packet on the malicious client, we can say that the configuration is not compliant. Indeed, the right thing that the candidate IS is supposed to do is to discard the announce, since it comes from a spoofed address that is not in its addresses or in its customer code. So we can declare that the configuration is compliant. Now we have to check how filtering works. So here, for each customer, we select a non-overlapping subnet with one of our small internet, and we announce it to the candidate. For example, this 12.11.10/24. So now we send the announce to the candidate, and we can wait. After a period, we can check the control plane of the provider of our candidate IS, and if we can inspect and detect the route into the control plane of the provider, this means that the candidate IS didn't filters out the announce, and so the configuration is not compliant. Instead, if we cannot detect the route into the control plane of our provider, this means that the candidate IS correctly discard the announce, and so the configuration is compliant. So the Roasty tool implements the first tool, and this is a recap for the people that never saw about it, is the first tool that implements a methodology to automatically verify MANRS compliance, allowing network operators to test their configuration without relying on manual and error-prone procedures, and to do this locally, so without making a disclosure of data that can be covered by privacy. And moreover, what we hope is that Roasty can reduce the time for MANRS adoption for a more secure global routing infrastructure, especially for small internet provider that maybe are not informed about MANRS and that didn't have and network operators that don't have the specific competence to test it in an easy way. So the updates from the last presentation are that we developed our custom parser for configurations to easily integrate new vendors, and we use this parser to add the support to MikroTik Router OS. Finally, we also unified all the checks in the Python code, since before the global information action was implemented separately. The current limitation of the tool, the main current limitation, is very evident, and is the fact that for now Roasty only supports single router configurations, but we are starting to work on multi-routers now that we have refactored all the code base. And this is really the next step of our project. So creating a methodology to verify multiple routers in the meantime, also for considering internal policy of the ISs. Moreover, for now, Roasty only considers action for network operators, but it can be extended also for internet exchange points, CDNs, and cloud providers, for other MANRS control. Another possibility is also to extend Roasty for MANRS Plus. We already presented the proposals to the MANRS Plus working group with how it is possible to check the other control of the control metrics for MANRS Plus. And finally, obviously, we need to extend the support to other vendors. And as I said before, here maybe we need some help for finding official containerized image of the routing of the operating system of different vendors. So this is our update. If you have any question, please ask. We also wrote, sometimes before, we also wrote a blog post on MANRS. So if you want to know more information, check it. Moreover, here you can find the QR code for the repository on GitHub if you want to contribute and to try the tool on your own. Thank you.
Okay, Tommaso, thank you very much. This looks absolutely fascinating, and I think it's really important to call out this work for how important it is in providing tooling to allow people to do what needs to be done and to check all of the information. And I'd particularly like to say that it's really good to see it being pushed down to support MikroTik devices, because they're so widely used in certain sections of the internet routing community.
Yeah, well, we found that especially small operators use MikroTik, especially here in Italy. In fact, what we will do the next step is to really test our tool with a small network operator in Italy to see if we can make
absolutely. And I think the smaller network operators are the organizations that have more trouble trying to deal with this. So it's really good to see this as a tool to help them automate their requirements. So thank you very much. Do we have any questions from people listening in?
Presented them roasted so many times to the working group that probably.
Okay, we have just one comment from Hillary. That support for MikroTik is important, and we also need support for ubiquity networks and VIOS. So thanks, Hillary, for that. Absolutely, I think you're right. The more the better. Okay, Tommaso, thank you very much. So
thank you.
I would like to now just go on to the community forum section and open up the floor to questions and comments and observations about routing security. So if anybody has questions or comments that they'd like to make, perhaps we could see some. Okay, I'll lead on a couple of things then. One of the issues that Andre brought up earlier was regulatory involvement in routing security, and those who've been keeping up to date on the European front. And I'm saying this for obviously living in Europe, but I think it's important because regulatory agencies tend to copy from one to the next. So if one regulatory body implements something, that's quite often copied, cut and paste to the rest of the world. So the European Union published its regulations on implementation of NIS2 on October the 17th, and is currently soliciting feedback on actual, or at least ENISA is now currently soliciting feedback on actual implementation guidelines and how this would dovetail into existing cybersecurity frameworks like NIST and ISO 27001. Are there people in this in the group here who would like to discuss any of this, or who have any questions, or for whom this is necessary? I think there's a couple of larger operators here, and I think it's quite relevant it's going to be quite relevant for many operators, because it's essentially coming down the line, and organizations like MANRS provide that framework. So does anybody have any questions from a point of view of regulatory issues, or any concerns that they'd like to express about regulatory stuff coming down the line? Okay, Andre has just published the implementation guidelines there in chat. I had a quick flick through these last night. They're quite extensive, and I think my initial concerns about these would be that they are still draft, and they need a little bit of work, particularly in relation to the routing security requirements. Okay, no questions on that. All right, let's swing back a little bit to some of the discussion that was happening earlier on between Antoine and Stavros, so one of the things I wanted to pick up on was ASPA, which is provider filtering using the RPKI framework. It allows you to do essentially AS path, limited AS path validation. Are there any organizations who are looking at this at the moment from a point of view of implementation on their networks?
Yes, we are.
Good.
Very quick way. We're basically waiting for the RERs to support objects, right? So as soon as does anybody know what RIPE is still waiting for? Are they actually waiting for the release of the official ITF documentation?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think punting that question to RIPE would be a great idea. Yeah,
it's something that we were recently questioned ourselves, right? What are people waiting for to I know there are tests for ASPA objects already, but yeah, we're basically waiting to publish.
Okay, we have a question here from Max.
It's not a question, but it's a bit of an answer to Antoine. It's the last time I've seen something from RIPE and CC, they were actually stating that they're waiting for the object description to be stable before starting with the implementation, because apparently they have everything ready in the background. It's just that they're waiting for it so that they don't do multiple different implementations as things keep changing in the
that's what I thought, right? Yeah, that's what I thought, right? It's publishing of the internet drafts in the CyberOps working group. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly the point. At least that's the last I've heard.
And that's a perfectly good explanation, right?
Antoine, do you have any visibility into ASPA support on routing stacks? So, for example, it's supported already on OpenBGPD, but I don't think it's made its way into mainline routing.
Yeah, well, so we want to test this in the lab, but in order to test it in the labs, first thing you need to do is publish your object, right? And so if we need to create our own publication server and only to do the testing of the validation in the lab, that we think that's a bit overkill. So we're waiting till we can publish objects, and then we will do the validation testing in the lab before deploying it.
Okay, just to confirm, this is for ISP filtering rather than IXP.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's really super that this is being looked at quite seriously in the community. Max makes a comment just on chat. You can use Krill to run your own certificate.
Yeah, exactly. That's so. At the moment, we are doubting. Should we go into the effort of creating our own CA in the lab and already start testing the validation software with that, or wait for publication of the records first? and do the testing with that. So basically, it's a two-step process.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any other organizations looking at implementing ASPA? Warwick, I think you're on mute. I think you're still on mute, Warwick. I'm not sure what's happening there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank
Sorry,
you very
my
much.
apologies. Jabra units go differently with Zoom every now and again. I was just going to say that there is a NREN working group that Internet2 has kicked off on ASPA. And we've been working, a number of NRENs have been working with Internet2 to look at supporting that. The biggest challenge for all of us was getting our heads around how ASPA would work in a mutual backup scenario, which NRENs do globally differently to the generic internet. And so we've been working through that, just making sure that the model would work in our environment. And it looks like at this stage, everything now looks like it's going to pass. So now it's a case of getting the various vendors' software deployed to actually start trialing and seeing how it will fail or not. So there's still work being done, but it's slowly progressing.
Okay, is that just Australian in Australia, or is it regional? Like, what's the scope of this work here?
The working group is made up of NRENs from all over the world working with Internet2. So it's got Europe, it's got Asia, Oceania, a number of different players from around the world trying it to see if it can make the NREN community ASPA compliant.
Okay, super. Yeah, that sounds really worthwhile. Okay, any further comments on ASPA from anybody else?
Hello, Nick. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Yu from China Unicom. For ASPA, we are now doing some experiment on our network. So we may have some experience after we finish our test in our network.
Okay, that's absolutely super. I'd like to just very explicitly welcome China Unicom. I think it's a huge thing for MANRS to have China Unicom on board. And we appreciate all of the efforts that we know you must have gone to internally to make this happen. And I think also, if you're looking at ASPA internally in China Unicom, I think that's a really good thing to be doing. It is still a little bit early in the life of ASPA. The specification hasn't finally come to its final state, but I think it's we're getting towards there on the CyberOps working group. So. Yeah, very much thank you for all of this work. It's very much appreciated, and I think it'll make a huge impact.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Totally agree with your comments. Since the ASPA is now not the RFC is in the IETF side of OPS working group, and now we are also doing very initial research and also very initial test in our network. So we very appreciate to share our experience to the community after our finished our test. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about it. Thank you very much. Okay, any further comments from people about ASPA? All right, let's just go back to the chat again, where Jean-Michel made a comment regarding NIS2. As far as I can tell, there will be a well, per country implementation, so risk of a different level of security in each country. So in IMHO, I don't see how MANRS, which is a global initiative, can help here. So Jean-Michel, can you comment about that and maybe just lead us through your thoughts on this?
Do you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So yes, as I said, there will be a declination per country, and each country can ask for different requirement. Of course, there will be a common set of requirements, but there could be some specific requirement in some countries, more stronger generally than stronger than the common rules.
Okay, thanks for the comment. I think yes, to a certain extent, this is something that happens in Europe in terms of implementing directives. So in terms of what this means in Europe, you have directives, you have regulations. A directive needs to be transposed to national law. A regulation becomes law immediately. So NIS2, the National Information Security directive, is a directive, and it needs to be transposed by each state into national law. So you are correct, Jean-Michel, to say that there will be implementation differences, but I think also there will be a commonality between those. Have you looked at all at the local implementations of each NIS2 implementation by any chance?
In France, there is some delay for the national declination, so I have not all the information for the moment.
Okay, I think a lot of countries, there was supposed to be an implementation across the European Union on October the 17th. This deadline has been missed by a lot of countries. You've said France. I know that Ireland has missed the implementation deadline as well. This is fairly normal. It takes quite a while, and I think particularly for very large legislation like NIS2, which requires primary legislation, which is to say parliamentary legislation in many countries, it's quite a big deal to get it through. In terms of the requirements, my take is probably most countries will tend towards implementing the ENISA list. So Andre posted the URL to the consultation earlier on today. I think if we as the MANRS community have input to make, I think we should absolutely make it to ENISA, and I think that would actually be reflected in common implementation standards initially throughout Europe and then more globally. So I think we actually have a bit of an obligation to speak up if we have any opinions on that. Are there any other questions about regulatory stuff? Andrei Robichowski, do you want to comment a little bit more about this?
Thank you, Nick. Well, maybe not specifically on ENISA. We haven't deeply looked into this consultation, but earlier this year there was a series of consultations related to the FCC proposed ruling. So both Internet Society and Global Cyber Alliance submitted their input on the ruling itself. Not specifically on the sort of suggested controls, but on the approach. And I can share the URL of our submission to the FCC consultation if it's useful to people. But the main gist was to seek for alignment, that a regulation doesn't replace best current practices or efforts like MANRS, but rather than acts as an awareness tool to stimulate those efforts and sort of pointing to those efforts. That also sort of underpins the teaser I presented earlier at this meeting about the MANRS development process, to make it easier for potential regulators or developers of policy requirements to point to some of the practices or actions or requirements easier, because that will be a stable reference, sort of professional reference there. So yeah, that's how we look at this. And in this kind of discussions, people usually refer to John Curran's presentation he made at a few NANEX ago, saying that, well, if we don't want regulators to give us the rules how to run the networks, we should be more active and raise awareness about how we think or how we run the networks as the community, and make it clear, make it visible, and ask for alignment. So efforts are not duplicated, and not even worse, they're not contradictory to what best practices are.
Thanks very much. I think that's a very good point. The best way not to be regulated is to make sure that you have adequate policies and procedures in place. Alejandra has just posted to chat about the MANRS blog and the Global Cyber Alliance comments to the FCC, and I think those comments are very much worth reading. And just on what Andre said about implementation, the law sets the framework, it sets the policies, which is what you need to do, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And I think that's where organizations and programs like MANRS come in. It tells you in much more granular detail about specific action items. So I think these two things can very much work hand in hand. So do we have any more comments or questions about this? Okay, I think that's about it, and I think that is also coming up to the end of our time slot. So thank you very much to everybody. Specifics, thanks to Warwick. Unfortunately, Warwick had to drop off from the call a couple of moments ago. And thank you to Global Cyber Alliance for hosting this and hosting the MANRS program. We're very much appreciative of all of the work, the very substantial work that you've been doing, and you've roadmapped out for the MANRS program. But most of all, thanks to everybody in the MANRS community, because this program will not work without your help as members of the community and people doing the work to actually make it happen on the ground. So we really appreciate it. And thank you very much. Alejandro, do you have any final comments you wish to make?
I was writing a message to remind everybody that they can still vote, yeah?
Yes. Yes, the voting closes up for the voting for the MANRS Steering Committee. There are two places being freed up by Flavio and Warwick, and that closes in 14 hours from now. So please, if anybody has received their voting link and who hasn't voted, please go off and vote, because your vote will be counted. And your vote matters, and we would the more votes, the better for this. So please, everybody, if you could go off and do that and discharge your community duties in that way. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to wrap up and say thank you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and goodbye.